TikTok deal is close. In fact, you could see something, I'm told by people familiar with the situation, as soon as the next 30 to 45 days in which you actually get the close of a TikTok deal in which the algorithm is licensed to a U.S. entity that is owned by new investors and some existing investors in ByteDance, TikTok's parent company right now, and then moves on. Importantly, and perhaps not unexpectedly as well, that entity that would continue to use the servers and the cloud infrastructure of Oracle. Of course, you may remember Project Texas from many years ago already when they moved all of the data to Oracle's cloud, something that actually helped build that cloud into what has been a competitive force, the likes of which we've obviously seen reflected in the incredible backlog that Oracle reported last week, sending its stock up. And you can see yet again the stock performing quite well. Now, here, it really isn't necessarily upside, except for the continued growth of TikTok, as much as it is, well, maybe there was some downside with the idea that perhaps it would go dark and therefore no longer be doing that business. That's not going to be the case. My understanding is, and again, some of this may be subject to change, that TikTok would pay as much as a 20%, that is TikTok US, a 20% of its revenues to China in terms of licensing the algorithm. By the way, we're talking about an algorithm. Our viewers know how successful it's been with 1 billion lines of code. By the way, TikTok itself, with 125 million users who spend as much as an hour a day on the app, just to give you a sense as to the power of it, not to mention what Oracle is doing for them and how much data and everything else is going through their cloud. But you get a series of new investors, existing ByteDance investors, at least some as well, step up. And then, where this thing is capitalized and how large it is remains to be seen. Although, Sarah, I'm hearing it's actually going to be relatively small in terms of the actual size of the checks that are written for the entity itself. And it will not be something that is going to go public at some point. It was described to me more as a perpetual security that can never be listed. We'll see. Also, don't really have an answer as to whether there will be any ownership whatsoever by the U.S., which suddenly seems to be in vogue, as we all know. So we'll see, but we're going to get a lot more clarity, perhaps as soon as the next month or a month and a half, in terms of the U.S. business being owned by a U.S. entity with U.S. investors, although still licensing that algorithm, obviously, from China that has been at the root of its success.
Right.